Welcome back to Storytellers Behind the Scenes. Thanks so much for joining me today. I am so very happy to bring you my interview with Andrea Corbi Fein. She is a good friend and an accomplished video editor with over 25 years experience. I have no doubt that you've seen her work on many networks, including HGTV, Food Network, MTV, Discovery, Animal Planet, The Science Channel, A&E, just to name a handful. She attributes some of her success to her love of music and music editing, which she started dabbling in while she was still a student in school, and then continued along that path as she went to college. Andrea also became a vegan several years ago and produces videos on plant-based cooking, and she imparts really valuable information on healthy eating and living, which I can't wait to share with you. So sit back, relax, grab a drink, and let's get right to it. Welcome, Andrea. Thank you so much for taking time to be with me today. I'm so happy to have you.
Thanks for having me, Jody. I'm excited to be here.
So you've been editing. You're an amazing editor, and you've been at it for quite a while. Tell me how you got into the business and why editing. Because there's not a lot of chicks, there aren't a lot of female editors, and you're a rock star. How did it all come together?
Thanks. True, right? About the not many female. I do work with a few females, but we're definitely the minority in here in Philadelphia. But how I got started, gosh, I didn't know about editing through school or high school or anything like that. But when I was about 13 years old, I was messing around. I love music. And I was messing around with cassette tapes. Okay, so we're going back a long, long time. And I would make mixes on my cassette tapes and edit different songs together. And I would do that. I'd choreograph dances to it. And then it was like, once I was in college, I was just going to community college. My mom, not having like a real direction or like desire to study a particular subject, my mom saw a commercial for the Art Institute of Philadelphia and said, there's something here with like TV and music that I think you'd be really good at. So we booked an interview, and it came about like I was going to enroll. It's like, oh yeah, they said you'd be a good director. And then once I took that editing class, that was it. And at the time I had a boyfriend who is my now husband who worked at a radio station, and we would mess around with Pro Tools and audio editing software, which was digital. And I was like starting to play with that. So once I was playing around with that music still in school, and then I put video to it, I was like, oh, this is it. It clicked.
You got the bug for editing.
Yeah.
So when you were a kid, I've spoken with some directors and DPs. And so, they would run around as kids with the camera and make movies. Did you do any of that when you were a kid? So you really didn't have a connection to this aspect of your personality, let's say.
No, it was just music. And the connection was, I always had rhythm, like I danced, I was a cheerleader, and I made up those, I think I started messing around with the audio aspect because I have my favorite band at the time was In Excess, and I had exhausted their entire library, and I wanted to hear new songs, but obviously you can't just be like, hey, make new songs. So I was editing different songs together to make my own new song. And then that became my hobby I don't even know if people knew I did it until I started choreographing dances and bringing into my cheer routines and
that
things
is
like that.
So cool.
It was kind of strange how it all came about.
Hey, your mom really got you going in the right direction. I mean, she obviously saw a lot of creativity in you, right? With music and cheering and just that aspect of and wanted to help you, find your direction. And boy, you really found your niche.
Yeah. I kind of in a way I think she had a moment where she goes, oh, where she went, oh crap, I forgot to like really point her. And so it was like a mad dash. But yes, she did the right thing, and she
Well,
saw me become an editor.
sometimes parents want to give their kids an opportunity to sort of work through some things too.
Yeah.
And obviously you may pick one direction and then you start working or you're studying. I was a social welfare major when I first started at Penn State, and it was depressing. And I thought, I can't do this for a living. First of all, I'm going to end up adopting, I'm going to have all these kids, which wouldn't have been a problem, except I probably would have had, 75 or 100. So that wouldn't work. But I knew that there was something else that I could do to help other people, lift other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always creative. And so I actually switched my major and went into communication studies at Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
It was the best thing I ever did. So sometimes, just like as a kid, you're not sure what you want to do.
Yeah.
And the fact that your mother was instrumental in kind of guiding you is phenomenal. You mentioned your husband was in the radio. Was he was in school at the time as well, and he was working for a radio station?
Yeah, he was at Temple, and as an intern, he's like an overachiever. He was working at the radio station and interning, and then got a job during his, I think, senior year, maybe junior and senior year at Temple. So, and then
you
right
guys
out of
had
school,
that love of music, and
yes.
It's so great you were playing around with that together. I love that.
That was great.
So you went to where did you go to school? The
Art Institute of Philadelphia.
Art Institute of Philadelphia. And do they have, I don't know much about their program. Do they have a really good hands-on post-production program?
Oh yeah. So at the time it was, in Center City, and it was the late 90s, and they had very hands-on. I mean, I was just in the lab every day with Avid or Pro Tools, whatever I wanted to sign up. I, operated cameras, lights. It was a 2-year intense, like straight 2 years through program for an associate's in that, degree of that specialized technology. And I just got my straight A's. I was really, really serious because I was a little bit older. I had done a few years at community, and I said, this is my thing. And I studied really hard and took every extracurricular project I could, so that when it came time to, when I graduated, I was working at a mall, and I said, okay, I guess I have to be like a manager or something and just wait and send out resumes. But it was 1 month out of school that my former teacher called me and said, hey, I know this small production company, they need an editor, and I'm giving them your name. And that was my first job.
And was that glass?
No, that was I was a small company in Yardley.
Okay.
So I was there for about 6 years, and then I went to glass, where I am now.
So you really almost immediately, your career trajectory kind of took off.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
Not everybody has that opportunity. So obviously you had mentors in school. Who would you say has been most influential, in guiding you, in life and in your career?
In school, you asked in school. So like there was the teacher, Pat McGrath. He was amazing. He was a post-production teacher. There was an audio teacher named Joe Kraus, who, there's the audio and the video. He was great. I protect my hearing. I've protected my hearing ever since then, ever since my early 20s, because of Joe Kraus. So like earplugs, all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And honestly, just my husband has been with me the whole way from when I started school until now. Like, he was in radio. He was in all of my video projects in school and things like that. And I had some mentors, here and there. I probably won't mention them because there were some bad and some good, but.
Well, isn't it interesting, because you point that out, and I tell interns this, and other people who've worked for me or people I've worked with, is it's always great, no matter what job you have, you're going to glean from that job, the
Mhm.
positives and the negatives.
Yeah.
So it allows you the opportunity to decide what you want to do and also what you don't want to do, who you want to model and who you don't want to model. To your point, of course, you're going to run into people that you don't want to be like.
Mhm.
It helps
You
as
said
you're
that well,
developing your
by the
career,
way.
right?
Yeah, I did this. The best phrase I heard that describes me as an editor is measure twice, cut once. That was a something I took and I stuck with.
And can you explain what that means?
Yes. So as an editor, I'm there's a rough cut stage, there's a a final stage. I like to edit clean throughout the process. I don't like to slap things together to just like have it done and to move forward. I'm pretty measuring twice is like making sure things fit kind of the first time. Of
Mhm.
course, I always go back and I adjust and clean up, but I really like to edit with purpose. So I may not get to the finish line as quickly. So it's kind of like slow and steady wins the
You're
race.
methodical.
Yes, that's my approach.
It works,
I hope
right?
so. I stand by it. It's my process.
Yeah. Now you've been editing for how many years now?
25 years
That is
professionally.
great.
Right.
That's incredible.
It seems surreal, but completely natural.
And editors, I don't think editors get nearly enough credit that they should. Okay. And I'm saying that sort of, I don't know if you are aware of this, but my first job in Philly was at EJ Stewart, and I was a production coordinator and like a facility producer.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, um, I was doing production when I was in Florida for 10 years. When I came back, I actually came back as an editor.
Really?
And I was a news editor for a long time. And um, that was when we were doing tape, okay, in the dark ages, one machine to the next. Then we learned how to B-roll.
Yep.
And then we went into nonlinear. But I have a different perspective because I've been in the field and
Mm-hmm.
I've been in post. And I do think editors do not get nearly the credit that they should. There are a lot of production companies where the producers go out. They come back, they hand the editor notes and they say, go at it.
Yeah, yeah.
Other production companies that the producer's sitting in the room with the editor. But the editor is really the one that brings the craft and really dials in the story, and we're all storytellers, right? And
Mm-hmm.
our podcast is Storytellers Behind the Scenes. And so you may not, and sometimes you are in the field, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But how do you find it to work with producers? Obviously, you've worked with all types of producers.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what you see as um, the most effective producer and that relationship, and how do you get past, and it's a two-part question,
Okay.
and how do you get past working with the producer that is not buttoned up and comes to you and their stuff is a mess?
So great questions. And I love that you have experience on both sides of the camera there. That's great. Um, they, the way that things are now, which I love, and it wasn't always like this in my career, producers are editing now. Producers are giving me string outs. They themselves are on Avid, and that I think gives producers a greater appreciation for editing. I do feel appreciated by everyone, so I'm thankful for that. Sometimes I'll get we'll get notes from a network and it'll say, okay, we'll just change this. It's like, well, how do you do that? The footage is the footage. I can only do so much with it.
Right.
But I don't know if I'm answering your question exactly right, but working with the producers, having them give us string outs is great. The way that we work best, I believe there is an allowance for me to interpret the takes, the pacing, the shot selection. If I want to change something for impact or dramatic effect, the producers that I work with are very flexible in that regard. And when there is a producer that isn't necessarily I don't want to even say that buttoned up, because like me, my process is my process. And with producers, their process is their process.
Right.
And sure, we gravitate towards, I may like the style of this one producer better than I like the style of another producer.
Right.
So if I feel like I needed more from them, and maybe in their other jobs, if I'm working with a freelancer or something, they've given the editor less, I am happy and capable of picking up the slack more or less. And I think at this point, editing for 25 years, I edit like a producer, right. And I'm often put in a producer editor role.
Yeah.
Which I really enjoy, because I never just take something for what it's worth and cover it with B-roll and
right.
music. I'm like, I am the eyes and I'm the first line of it's what I do is what the audience is going to see. So if
right.
it makes sense to me, it'll make sense to them. So I interpret it. I do what I want to it, kind of,
right.
Maybe the producer, I hope that they don't get mad if I elaborate on what they've done, or if I give and take a little bit, remove, or, but usually it works out.
But it is a give and take. But
yeah,
I've worked with many different editors. We have never worked together, sadly.
No.
Maybe we'll change that one of these days.
That would be great.
But I've worked with some editors that take full creative license and they don't hear what I'm asking them.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are these other editors that I've worked with that are just, they're your partners, right?
Yeah.
It's like a dance, you understand each other. It's an interesting dynamic. I've always loved, I think because of my experience as an editor, I have this very deep appreciation for the work that you do. And one of the things that we hear in the field a lot, and of course, I've been in the field, many, many years,
mm-hmm.
You hear that term, fix it in post. Does that make your skin crawl?
Yes. Did I answer that fast enough?
I mean, I've heard that so many times, and it makes my skin crawl. It's like, no, if you don't get it right in the field and you don't think through the process well,
mm-hmm.
and sometimes, as well as I do, we think through everything to the point where it's like redundancy and it's obnoxious, right? We're like dreaming about our shoots. But sometimes, you get these people and it's like, well, we don't really need to reshoot that. They'll fix it in post.
And if that's what the person in the field is saying, what they're saying is, what they're doing is making it take more time for an editor or me to figure out a solution with minimal footage. Now, that is not going to make the best outcome.
And that's when you're going to get those notes back from the network saying.
Right. And the field doesn't get those notes. I get those notes.
Right.
So that's where it's frustrating. I wish there was, and for whatever reason, if they do say fix it in post because they're under a time constraint, I hope it's always a reason why they're saying that and not just to be lazy. Maybe there might be a valid reason to say that.
Sure. And sometimes there absolutely is. There's chaos. Somebody got sick on set or whatever. There are things that we can't predict, obviously.
Sure. And I want to, saying that out loud just now, like, I want to have sympathy for that. But if that's the case, and we do fix it in post,
Right.
is it going to look as good as it can? Probably not. And over the years, all of these fix it in post problems have also made us better editors, because we get super crafty and creative with how we fix it in post. They're not all great, but some of them are pretty good. I don't want to hear that anymore, though, but
it's interesting that you say that, because you have to come up with a workaround, right? I mean,
Yes.
so it does make you sort of dig deeper and try to come up with a solution, how to make it better. And, we've all done different things, flipping video around as long as there's no words, whatever the fix is. But I have also been in edit rooms. I've been an EP, a number of times, and post supervisor. And I've been in edit rooms where you'll hear the editor say, what were they thinking? Why didn't they get that shot? Or why didn't they get that shot? And I think that sometimes there's a disconnect between the field and pre-pro and post-production. And I always try personally to bring my editors into the pre-production process.
That's great.
Because you guys bring a completely different perspective. You're looking through, no pun intended, a different lens than the producer. As somebody who's had experience in multiple levels, when I go out on a shoot, I'm thinking about, how is it going to be cut?
Oh, really? Good.
What do they need in the edit room? I'm always thinking about that, but I have a different perspective. So have you run into that problem too, where you felt like you're not being heard? Maybe not at Glass or whatever, but on certain projects, do you find that being brought in earlier into the pre-production process is valuable as an editor?
I absolutely, thank you for being that liaison I'm sure your editors and field and everyone appreciates when you do that, when you incorporate the connection between post and field. I try, I don't know if it's always possible for me to be involved in the early stages.
Because you're busy in an edit room.
Well, or that's not always part of the process of the way that the show is run.
Right.
I'm always happy to be there. Some shows are different than others. I do give feedback to my EPs, my supervisors, to relate to the field, but I write emails. And I sometimes will generate hey, if it's this kind of show, let's say if it's a makeover show, can you please make this standard for the field? These are the kinds of shots we need, and can we adhere to it? And then if they're not, I'm like, hey, squeaky wheel here. Can you relay that again? I would love to be more involved in the pre-production or production process, or like catch-up meeting. But sometimes I get the vibe that field doesn't want to hear from post. And that could be wrong. I would love to connect more with them, because I think we post and field really need to be friends, because I don't ever want to feel that the field goes out and shoots, delivers their, footage, and then just walks away and never thinks about it again. I want them to see how we turned what they gave us into magic.
Right.
I want them to be invested. And I think if they're invested and they know that there's this person here putting together all of the footage that they shot, maybe they would do another beat, take an extra step, not have an attitude of fix it in post. But I hope, but there's only so, I don't want to be annoying all the time.
You're not annoying.
And complain, I don't want to complain all the time. And so sometimes I go, well, they didn't get it.
That's what I have.
It's, today I'll just deal with it.
Now, are you doing color correction? And you said Pro Tools earlier because you know how to use it, but you're not fine tuning in that process.
I'm not. No, at this point, there was a point earlier at Glass where I am. I've been for the past 18 years, where when we were tape based, I was doing color. I was never doing Pro Tools professionally. But no, I'm just a I'm just the editor. I don't do color, and I don't do I mean, I color things as I go along just to
Right.
even it out sometimes, but no.
Right. So let's talk about, I mean, you've been through a lot in your life, right? And I don't know how much you want to get into discussing, your whole life. And I'm open to talking about whatever you're comfortable with, but you have been through a lot. How has the experience that you've had in your life and your personal experiences altered the way you see your own reality?
Very much so. And I will address the life experience that we are talking about, and which I'm very comfortable with. So in 2009, I had a brain tumor out of nowhere. The funny thing was, I'm at my job for 18 years. It was during a point where I was laid off. We're a small production company. We had a bit of layoffs, temporary, and I got a new job in the city, and I was editing a great Food Network show. And I was a freelancer for the first time in my life, and that was pretty cool. And all of a sudden, I just was having these headaches, and I woke up out of sleep one night with an explosive headache that made me just jump out of bed screaming. And so turns out I had a brain tumor and a bleeding AVM. No inkling that was happening. And I had emergency surgery within a few days,
Wow.
as fast as I could. Like it was like a day and a half or something. And so I kind of lost my freelance gig after a couple months because, well, you can't really recover from brain surgery and have a freelance gig. So
It takes a little time.
Yeah, it took some time. So I took off. It was actually, I just celebrated, it was 14 years ago this week that this happened. And so I recovered, didn't think, well, I couldn't really think well, but I mean, it didn't leave me with any ill effects other than scars, a little bit of a crooked thing here. And that's maybe a little bald spot somewhere.
You're gorgeous.
I was able to, thank you. I was able to recover fully, thankfully. So I took some time off, and then I started back up freelancing for my old employer, my now current employer, Glass, and was rehired, and just kind of started over again. So it didn't
make it sound so easy, but you're remarkable.
It's easy now. Like, how time really does heal, right? So I'm able to take that I edited myself down. Editing myself is very hard, by the way. So moving forward with work, I was like, oh, do I still want to edit? And as soon as I sit down at an Avid, and I've always been an Avid editor, my fingers move. I just know what to do. So I'm like, okay, this is my thing. I do that. But what it has done for my life has been, is like magnanimous. Is that a word, magnanimous?
Yes,
it has that experience has changed my life. So
life altering. I mean,
absolutely. It made me start to, not all at once either. So little by little, I started to look at my relationships in life. I was very grateful, and I had support. I tried very hard to be healthy. At that point, I had lost my mother the year before, so I didn't have parents. In my early 30s, and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to die before I'm 40. I had this brain tumor thing now. So what do I need to do to enjoy my life and to have a good life? And it wasn't about like living life to the fullest.
It wasn't going out and partying and.
No, it and it wasn't a retreat from that. It was like, okay, I liked to have fun and go out and dine out and indulge on occasion. I was young, and I had a lot of friends nearby, but I started to really just focus on what was going to help me reach longevity. So, maybe some relationships, that I didn't want to force relationships. I wanted things to be, that, mutual. So maybe I thinned out a little bit there. And then I started to care about more of my exercise habits. So less going out to party and more staying in and maybe eating healthier. And there was someone at work at the time who was changing her lifestyle. Our Pro Tools editor at the time, her name's Donna. And she was like trying to she's a little older than me, and she was making some life changes and sent me this video. And it was called Uprooting the Leading Causes of Death. And it was an hour-long presentation from Dr. Michael Greger of nutritionfacts.org. And nutritionfacts.org is a nonprofit website. It's kind of like it's just this resource of evidence-based nutrition. And so she sent this video to me, and I was like, okay, let me watch this. This is a couple years after brain surgery. I'm making little changes. I'm reading more about the brain. I'm reading more about health in my free time. And I watched this video, and it talks about the leading causes of death, which is stroke, heart attack, diabetes, lung disease, all the, the normal chronic illnesses. And all of these things are things that my parents dealt with and are in my family. And I just had that, brain tumor, and I'm watching it. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I don't know how many people my age are sitting down on a summer afternoon watching something called Uprooting the Leading Causes of Death. But me, right. Hey, I've got that brain tumor thing. So there were a few things that were said in that video that made me stop in my tracks. And one of the statements was, just because you've been dealt a bad genetic hand doesn't mean you can't reshuffle the deck with diet. And I was like, whoa, and what I learned was I didn't have to, here I thought I'm just going to succumb to the diseases my parents did. Here I have a chance to reduce my risk of chronic illnesses through diet. So based on this video, I learned that moving more towards plant-based eating, the more towards plants, the less risk you have and the more chance for longevity. So that is what I wanted. And I said, I'm going to try this for 12 days or 14 days. And I tried it, and I didn't stop trying it. So since then, throughout the years, that was 11 years ago, I think that the person I've become, my best version of me, I hope, or the me I really feel like I have a purpose, I feel my best now, because I eat purposefully.
You're mindful of these things.
Yes. And I respect, it's kind of like people think that eating plant-based may be restrictive, but it's really a commitment that I have to my life and to my health. And it makes me happy. And it's easy to keep.
And you share it with the world. I love it. You have your own, website. You put videos out there where you're teaching. I've used your recipes.
Thanks.
Because, and I want to talk about the website, nutrition.org.
That's Dr. Greger's website is nutritionfacts.org. Yeah. So daily. So I watch these videos. Since 2012, I guess this happened. I've been watching, I've been a real student of doctors and evidence-based nutrition, doctors who practice prevention, and talk about the relationship between food and health.
Or naturopathic type of things.
Well,
too, right?
but yes and no, just more like incorporating medicine, because I firmly believe in modern medicine. I mean, look, I'm here because of surgery, but I think that lifestyle just plays I think it's more lifestyle medicine. So you have the medicine and the diet portion and exercise.
You're 100% vegan, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What I love about you is you are not a lazy person. Okay. I mean, you're constantly between work, your videos, for your vegan cooking.
Yeah.
Exercise is a huge thing. You were teaching.
Yeah, I may do that again.
That wasn't yoga. That was aerobics or Zumba or.
Yeah, like it's a cardio. During this whole like transformation, I guess you'd call it. I was like, oh, I'm not going to just walk to dinner as my exercise. I'm going to, take Zumba classes and cardio pop classes. So I've been doing that, and then I'm friendly with the owner, and I'm also like a good student that I've been approached to teach classes. So I was doing that for a year. I took a little time off, and I'm going to get back to that in October, teaching an early morning class.
You're amazing.
Because, and also like I'm a middle-aged woman, and I want to encourage, middle age is when, if you keep up with some bad habits, you're just going to keep going. And then, these chronic illnesses don't just pop up in old age. They are built. So if you build the good habits now, you push the rest of that stuff away, further away, and maybe out of your life. So I want to encourage people my age, younger, all ages. I don't age discriminate, to keep active, eat well.
What I love too is, because you do put out these videos and everything, you had an opportunity to meet Dr. Greger and actually work with him, which I know was also life altering for you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. And of course, my husband worked with you on that and sort of came home and said, would you try to be a vegan just for our New Year's resolution, just for 1 month? Let's try it. And I would say I'm pretty much 98% vegan, because on the road and sometimes it's a little tough.
Oh yeah.
But I'm not, I haven't had red meat or chicken. Like, it's changed my life.
Wow.
So talk to me about how meeting Dr. Greger and actually working with him, because you were the director on these shoots. So tell us about it.
This was so crazy. I'm so glad. I was so glad to work with Daryl, by the way, because I've worked with his footage for years before, and I'm such a fan. So the craziest story. So yes, this, Dr. Greger, this is, I guess I learned about him in about 2012. That's when I started eating all plant-based vegan diet. And then in 2019, I'm just sitting in my office, minding my own business. My office is like the first I work from home now, but my office was the first one that people would walk into if say my boss were walking someone around. So this person comes in and they introduce them and say, hey, this is Dustin from nutritionfacts.org. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, Dr. Greger from nutritionfacts.org, the nutritionfacts.org. And he said, yeah. I said, do you realize where you are right now? And I was like, and he has, like, the website, Dr. Greger has changed my life through his books, through Uprooting the Leading Causes of Death. I was like, I know where he is on tour right now. I know what's happening. Like, why are you here? Like, are you here for me? Like, what happened? I didn't. You
had a direct link, telepathic.
Right. It was perplexing. So Dr. Greger had moved to Philadelphia and moved into a rental property. I think that there was like some kind of like combination of, oh, I know so-and-so production company. He's new in town. And then the link was made, and he sent his representative over to Glass Entertainment Group. And it just so happens that I was there. And I sat the guy down and I said, we have to work together. You found the right place. What are you doing? And what they were doing at the time was all of his videos were just voiceover with graphics, but he wanted to be on camera because he felt that when people saw a person, they may be able to connect better. And the information can translate better. Hence the reason why I've been trying to talk to camera more on my own Instagram stuff. So I was like, great. Okay. So we should do that. And I like to believe that I sold them on it, but they were just looking for someone.
They were thrilled to have literally bumped into you.
Yeah.
It was fate. It was meant to be.
It was meant to be. And I said, you know what? I said, I understand the content. I watch it every day. You know, you should please choose us and like that. So, and we were hired just to shoot the videos with the doctor, green screen, teleprompter, and they had someone else to edit them. So, okay. So as an editor, I was I was grateful to have the business.
Right.
But I
you
wanted
to
be
physically
involved.
work. Right.
Yes. So I went into my supervisor's office and I said, I'm going to be on those shoots, not I want to. I said, so Dr. Greger, I'm going to be on those shoots. Like, kind of like, let's figure this out,
Right.
because I'm not going to be there. And
you actually needed to be there, Andrea, because
I did.
We're so tuned in to the magic of his work, and just the you're so authentic. They needed you there.
I feel that, and thank you. And my supervisor, being the great supervisor he is, he said, "You're going to direct them." I said, "Okay." And then so from there on, I was like, "Great." So, you know, scripts were sent my way. I organized. I've never done that. I was never in the field in my life. The shoots were down the street from my house. I read 50 pages of scripts. I highlighted the really hard to say words and prompted Dr. Greger before he started a particular script and said, "Hey, watch out for these words." And he was like, "Oh, thanks." And we got through them. And we got through them really, really well. And it wasn't like I didn't have a moment of, you know,
like, oh my God, what am I doing?
No, I mean, like, I was nervous, of course, but I was just I was really focused on the work and what I knew. And like, I say I haven't been in the field, but obviously I watch footage every day and I understand.
You feel like it.
Yeah, exactly. So we did, I think it was about 4 shoots.
How many webisodes?
150, over 150 short videos. So the videos range from maybe 4 minutes to 8 minutes. And we got through in 4 sessions, several years worth of content for him. Amazing. Because he's writing books at times and then doing the videos. But so I think that the crew, you know, Dr. Greger himself is very engaging. And the crew was like, "Whoa, that's really some interesting information." Hence, your husband picking up on some of the information. And
his thing was really about the inflammation and the pain and everything, which is that, you know, from humping, you know, in the old days, those cameras were ridiculous. Plus, you know, they had to wear battery belts around their waist, which weighed like 40 pounds, you know, so if you're a DP long enough, you're going to have breakdown in your shoulders and things like that. So he said, let's try it.
Yeah. He's
probably I think it's so fantastic that you got to work with someone like Dr. Greger, someone you admired so much, who really you credit with helping you shift your mindset on your nutrition.
Yes. Very much so. And I'm still, if when he's in Philadelphia, me and a couple friends who he's also connected with had dinner with him just last month. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, I feel like I can reach out to him, but like I don't but he's got a new book coming out, but yeah. But I think he's the one person that, and I know that we're talking about him a lot, but just to this nutritionfacts.org is such a great resource, because it's not that he does the studies himself. He just reads all of the studies in PubMed that are published in the English speaking language and just kind of disseminates them into digestible, pun intended, videos. So if people want to learn about, you know, what can be done, or, you know, learn about food or nutrients or chronic things, they can find a good path to follow to help reduce their risk for disease.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you'll be back for more videos with you.
Yeah, hope so.
That's so exciting. So let's talk a little bit. So you work at, it's now Glass Entertainment Group?
Correct.
because it's gone through some iterations, right?
Yeah.
From when Nancy,
Formerly Nancy Glass Productions to Glass Entertainment Group. Yes.
and how long have you been there now?
18 years.
Wow.
Basically my career is there. And it's never been, just that short little stint. And then I came back after that surgery. And it's just always evolved.
Yeah.
It just keeps evolving.
Well, and you guys are cranking out incredible amounts of, just all types of
Yeah.
amazing award-winning television and film and podcasts now, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your work there and,
Sure.
some of the projects and the shows, because, you know, you have a lot of unscripted reality. You're doing bio sort of documentaries. Talk a little bit about it.
Sure. There's definitely a lot of variety going on at Glass Entertainment Group right now. And we have a fairly sizable staff, and we have 11 editors, and we are all we're 11 staff editors, and then more daily based on the workflow and the amount of projects we have. But I think right now, gosh, we definitely have gotten into we had a lot of CNN, like big time CNN programming with the Lincoln, and there was a Pope. We had these really high profile shows for CNN, and then we had we have a lot of crime shows also. There was a Dahmer, Nancy.
That's such an interesting, share that a little bit.
Nancy, our fearless leader, amazing boss, amazing supporter. What's that? Nancy Glass. Nancy Glass. Our fearless leader. So Nancy with I know there's been a bunch of shows about Jeffrey Dahmer, and she was, the one reporter who spoke to him and interviewed him.
The only one.
The only one. And that story is told, I think the show is called Dahmer on Dahmer. If I'm not, it's been a few years. That's one that we did, and it uses her interviews throughout the episode. But we have crime. We just had something on Hulu called Betrayal, which did really, really well. It's also a podcast. We had I think we have a Columbine podcast. We had an O.J. Simpson podcast. I'm not sure what's going on now. We have some stuff on, we just finished up Heartland Docs for Discovery Channel. We've had some Animal Planet shows that have wrapped.
Well, Tanked.
And Tanked. Gosh, that was like
very popular.
A million seasons of Tanked. And then we have our HGTV lot, which is right now Tough Love with Hillary Farr. She's from Love It or List It. And then
I'd love her to come to my house.
I know. And people love her, and she's great. That show's really fun. So I worked on that a little bit. And also right now I'm in the middle of, we recently have gotten Christina on the Coast, which is Christina Hall from Flip or Flop. Oh. And then we got her season 4, and then she has a new show called Christina in the Country. And so we're on season 2 of that. So we started season 1 and season 2, and we just got finished up season 4 of Christina on the Coast. We didn't start that, but we picked up 4, and then we're on 5. So I've been bouncing around between both Christina shows for a good part of maybe over a year now. And that's been really fun.
You'll work on a couple of different projects, or you would normally be working on, like a whole season of one particular show?
I think ideally the way they'd like things scheduled would be to have dedicated people to episodes and to shows, but that doesn't always work out timing wise. So our editors, myself included, are really well versed in bouncing around and knowing how to pick up on what you're jumping into. So if there's a lag in, a dark week somewhere, I can just as easily jump into any of the other shows that are happening right now.
I'm
And
still blown away
yeah,
that you said there's 11 staff editors plus. Now
plus
that
three
doesn't
assistants.
include assistant editors, right?
No, no, no. Gosh, thank you, assistant editors across the land.
So,
Thank you, assistant.
I want to talk about that a little bit because,
Sure.
one of the things I do try to share with listeners is, I try to impart information for people that may be entering into the field, coming out of college, wanting to shift, what they're doing.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't understand what an assistant editor does and how meaningful and important
Oh,
the work they are doing is to production in general, but
mm.
specifically for editors. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yes, they are the first line. If I don't know how to do what they do anymore. I without them, I don't even know how footage would get into the system and be organized. They spend the time to ingest all of the footage and organize it by scene, by date, descriptions. They match the audio, they group the audio with the video. They put it in the project so you know where it's at. They string out full sequences of days and B-roll sequences and scenes. And they prepare everything so that a producer can come in, open up a project, and have everything pop up and make sense. And then the same thing for the editors. And then they field all of our requests slash demands. Hey, where's this? Like, they don't, everything from the field has to get to us, and they're responsible for that. And they don't miss it.
No.
They also have to work with complicated, frame rate changes, and something goes wrong, and they're really
And that
good.
happens in the field. Obviously, sometimes, a DP camera operator hits a button by accident and it's a different frame rate, or, it doesn't match up with the other footage and they have to sort that out.
Yeah. And, a lot of my work in the past few years also has been on I do a lot of development. So there might have been a year where I was just solely working on development projects, which I love. I think some people hate that because I love it. It's like my if I ever need a creativity boost, it's like, here's a bunch of nothing or a Zoom interview and a concept. Can you do something with this? And I'm like, yeah. So I'm digging into that music like the old days, and I need to find footage, or I'm pulling things from YouTube, and I'm pulling things from Shutterstock and making up some graphics on Photoshop myself. But those assistant editors are getting lots of emails from, that's when they're really, I put them to work, and I'm like, I need this, I need that. They put all of that in for me. And then they make all the links. So I like to encourage them to ask to maybe edit. We promote from within a lot at Glass Entertainment Group. I've seen people go from intern to EP. So I like to encourage the assistant editors, if your goal is to be in this seat, which many of at least 3 or 4 of our editors now were assistant editors, speak up and just ask us, and we'll give you something to edit. And it's all, it's up to you. So
Amazing.
they're great. So I really appreciate assistant editors, and they're organized.
And they really are. It's such a critical aspect of just the overall post-production process.
Yeah.
And they're also involved in the deliverable process. So it's, I don't, when I say I don't think editors get enough, kudos for their work. Certainly assistant editors are sort of in the shadow of the editor to begin with. And they really do carry a lot of the load early on.
Yes.
So I'm glad we talked about that a little bit. So if you were to try, and maybe you've already done this, if you were trying to calculate like the number of hours of TV, let's say, that you've cut in your extensive, career, would it be, it's like clearly over 1,000, but you know, is it like 50,000? Have you ever like sat down and even thought about that? Because
Not the
number would be
hours.
insane, Andrea.
It's like the amount of hours that were thrown away also might be, I edit a lot of stuff that never gets seen also,
Of course.
like with a lot of the development, but I don't know if I was like looking at my LinkedIn and just like kind of counting the projects that I've worked on in just by being at Glass.
Yeah.
But it was, I don't know if it was like 100 shows or 300 shows or like,
You're talking about different,
not even
projects.
Episodes, just
Right.
projects.
Exactly.
And within those projects, there's could be seasons upon seasons upon seasons of
I'm thinking you're like,
thousands.
50,000. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's just crazy. So you've worked on a lot of shows and you sent me some of them. What would you say? So talk about the reality shows you've done, because people are fascinated about reality TV. And I've worked in reality, so we have that in common.
Mhm.
And a lot of the questions that I get, and I worked on Restaurant Impossible for quite a while, and you worked on Dinner Impossible, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So,
that was fun.
One of the questions that I do get a lot is, or the statements, let me phrase it that way, is that's all contrived. That's not real. Why is it called reality TV? Now, in the case of Restaurant Impossible, which I can speak to firsthand, is that was not contrived. And it actually did play out on camera the way it was happening in real time. We were not manipulating. And Mark Summers was very adamant. I don't want anything made up. I don't want people getting, lines, told what to say. I want it to be authentic.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking Dinner Impossible was very much like that, right? Because he was also the EP of that show.
Yes.
So when you think about the work that you've done, what would you say was your favorite show to work on?
Easy. It was recently. My favorite show to ever work on was MTV's My Life on MTV. During the pandemic, I don't know, I think that MTV, I don't know the genesis of how this happened, but they have a vast library of footage that goes back to the early 80s, to when they began. And they wanted to create shows with their content. And so they picked artists, and the show was about, my favorite episode was My Life on MTV, Lady Gaga. It was a half-hour episode, and it told Lady Gaga's story through the eyes of her being on MTV and all of her appearances, and whether it was a VMA, Video Music Awards appearance, or like a little show that they did with her as a special guest, interviews, etc., and her music videos. And I had access to, I did Lady Gaga. That was my favorite, start to finish. Justin Timberlake, Miley Cyrus. There was a Madonna episode that ended up getting cut at the last minute. That was supposed to be the premiere because
it never ran,
never aired. It never aired because I think they couldn't get approval for something at the last minute before they aired. So then
clearances, right?
not for clear. Just yeah.
You don't know.
I think she approved it, and then something happened. There was a lapse in time, so something happened there. But that show, I got to edit. I got to go back to my roots of music editing, and I was making these mixes, these mashups of Lady Gaga songs. At the top of it.
Oh, wow.
And then told her story, and the whole show has this continuous soundtrack, and every music edit in there I will stand by. And that's because that's one thing, like I don't watch TV and try to pick out bad edits. I truly, if I'm watching TV, which I actually don't do all that much of because I'm doing it all day, I don't notice a lot of bad editing, because I think things are great. I think that the professionals out there know what they're doing. But if I hear a bad music edit or a bad audio edit, my ears perk up like that.
Right.
So That MTV show was great. And we've been doing, I forgot to mention, yeah, we did a series called Family Legacy with them, where it was the kids of some big time artists.
Oh, I love
Uh,
that.
we're talking about their parents. So hopefully there will be more of that. I would love to jump over to that show if it
I
comes.
bet.
That was
Because
really fun.
connects
That's
you.
on YouTube too, by the way. I think that My Life on MTV was really fun.
Well, and it connected you to, as you said, to your roots of music, which you adore. And
Yeah, it's just fun. I love things that are driving. Like I really like doing sizzle reels and things like that, and just for impact, rhythm.
when you think about your career as an editor and just being in the business in general, being an editor, you're a lot of times you're in a room by yourself. It's dark. I mean, you're
Mhm.
working at home now, so that's
Mhm.
post
Still
pandemic.
dark.
Pre-pandemic, it's still
Yeah.
dark, right? But you're in an edit room, you're in an edit bay, and you're like, staring at multiple, monitors, and you're listening to the same 10 words 46 times in order to get it to fit just perfectly or what have you.
Yes.
How you're such a gregarious, outgoing person. You're lovely. And you're
Thank you.
fun. So how do you balance being stuck in a room by yourself, staring at monitors? You're kind of like isolated in a way. How
Yeah.
did you balance that with your personality?
Oh gosh. I like interacting with my producers. So typically I do have a producer on any show that I'm working on, or so I
In the room with you, Andrea?
not in the room. So now the way that we work is with teams. I think that working through Teams, Microsoft Teams,
Yes.
has been amazing, has opened up our talent pool of producers and editors also,
Wow.
because we used to just be with the same people all the time, and
Yeah.
we have a variety of producers and everyone's amazing. But this new technology now has allowed me to converse with people with more ease. They don't have to come down to my office, or they can be in California, or they can be in Montana, or wherever they are. That's been great. We can chat easier. So I do engage with people, and I can get
Can you
quicker.
do that in real time? Do you do that in real time where they can actually be
Yeah.
in the room with you? No.
I share my screen sometimes. So if like say I'm doing notes on an episode from the network, and recently we had a lot of tough deadlines, and we have me and the producer had a nice shared Google document going through the notes. I would have a color and say, like, I'm attacking this note, you attack that one, and we would see each other writing, and I'd ask her to find something for me, or message her, and she would find a clip that answered the need of the network note, and put it in a bin called Ready for Editor, and then would alert me. And then we would watch it. I'd say, I'm going to call you. I'll share my screen. Tell me if this looks right. It's instant. And that's been fun. So I feel like I do get to engage a bit with people still.
Mhm.
And so I'm not really just like slogging through the day, like, oh
Alone.
gosh, it's no, because like
Right.
I'm solving a puzzle, and I'm going to stand up. I have a standing desk on the way, so I do need to stand a bit more. I do hate sitting all day long, and don't think it's good for me. And so I'm going to stand a bit more. And I like working, my brain is working on a puzzle. So I get to do that. I get to engage with a producer, and then I do take a good lunch. I make sure I do that every single day. I cook lunch. I take my hour. So I remove myself. I talk. I see my husband. So that's kind of how my day goes. It's a nice balance, and I can get up and like breathe fresh air and go walk out front or walk out back, and see some
Did you
sun.
find it difficult to make that shift, or, the word pivots thrown around a lot, but
Right.
especially with the pandemic, and thank goodness it's pretty much, I mean, it's still kind of floating out there, the COVID, not the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But when you made the shift, it was a good year and a half or 2 years, right? Like we were
Yeah.
all isolated.
Yeah.
How did that impact your work?
Oh, it was, I would say that, we weren't quite up and running as we are now. and or like talking to people so much. It was, and I think I was working on like something that wasn't great, like I wasn't feeling what I was working on. So it was really dark, I would say. It was dark and a bit depressing for a good while until I think the MTV show that came along kind of pumped me up and gave me something to focus on when I didn't want to stop working when I was working on it. It was so strange, but it was tough. But then we learned how to behave and how to be efficient with our work and how to connect more. And thankfully things got better. And I really like working from home. I do miss, having coffee with certain people because I don't engage with editors really, because I'm always engaging with producers.
Right. Right.
So I don't really, I engage sometimes if an editor and I are on the same show, then I'll get to chit chat. But
it's different. You're not walking into the
different.
kitchen, having a conversation with a group of people.
No.
Is anybody in the building?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can go in if you want.
Yeah. But you have an option.
Yes, absolutely. But I find myself to be not into. I really enjoy the extra time
Mm-hmm.
in
and
mornings.
Some people are more productive, I think. Now, some people aren't as productive when they work at home, and some people are equally or more productive.
Yeah, I mean, if I wasn't productive at home, I wouldn't work from home. But I like it. I really like how things have worked out.
If you were going to give advice to someone who's getting out of school or considering post as a career, what would you suggest that they do to dabble? Whether it's in college or on their own, like you were editing music and creating these playlists. I love that.
I think nowadays it's I often talk to people in school, like my friends have kids who are in their teens going into college, and they've interviewed me, or they have a little session with me. I love talking to interns and encouraging them to do things. There's so much out there that people can do with technology editing that wasn't available to me, and I don't even know about. So, I mean, I'm a professional editor and I don't really edit anything else. So I don't know anything, but it's kind of strange. They may know more than me. It's like, so students, young people may know more than me about editing and uploading things to YouTube, which I think a lot of kids I don't want to call them kids, but young people are doing these days. And then they make these reels and they cut movie clips to music. I think that that's great. So I think that just editing with whatever, iMovie, whatever software they have, keep doing that. That's a great first step to understanding the process of post. And I don't necessarily think you need to have a degree of like a master's degree in film to do production or post-production, but get a great internship or just get a internship and network and show people your enthusiasm and your passion and some of your work. Take on some side projects and make a little quick movie for someone, or maybe they can do it on their phones. I don't know. I keep doing that.
I will say, to your point, the younger people that are in school now, and even like kids, when my kids were younger, they had opportunities to play around with devices and technology. My son at like 11 taught himself how to cut on Cinema 4D. Like he came to Daryl one day and he said, "Dad, can I use your PayPal?" And Daryl's like, "What?" Like, yeah, I need somebody wants to pay me for editing and creating a graphic animation for a gamer.
See?
And he was 11. And Daryl's like, yeah, sure. Next thing you know, bing, money gets deposited. Well, Ben kept doing this, and Daryl's like, you got to get your own PayPal account. Like, I have to separate our money here. I mean, it was little pieces.
Yeah.
But he taught himself that on his own.
That's amazing.
And I do think their brains are wired differently. For me, who's been in this business for a long time, I've gone through that process where I have to continually evolve in order to remain relevant, not just in my own head, but to compete, be sure that I'm bringing value to my clients and that I'm giving them opportunities to accomplish their goals in a different way than we used to. Planning, you have to, with brand integration and things like this, you have to promote work on multiple platforms, right? It's not just on TV anymore. It's on, Snapchat or, whatever it is, and Instagram, YouTube. There's so many more outlets for younger people to work. So to your point, just dive in, right?
Yeah, just play around. Even I've even been editing things on Instagram. I've been getting into Reels lately. And because, it's hard for me to want to edit something because I can't be precise, and that's frustrating because but I'm learning, like, oh, look how I can do this and put this together, but it's just so hard.
Yeah.
It's easy for people who don't have the professional tools, but it's
right. You don't have that mindset, That's great though, that you're playing around with it.
I just want to see what they can do.
Has AI kind of creeped into the post world at all?
Not in my orbit yet. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how AI fits into our world in production in general, which we already know. I mean, that's part of why there's a writer's strike, right? And a SAG, but
oh, I did hear that when I was recently, Dr. Greger mentioned that when if he needs to update something for his, like, if maybe a fact is off, the production company can use AI to generate a new line rather than have him record it, because they have his voice and they're able to write a script and have AI generate a voiceover. So I think that would be incredible for a fix it and post solution.
That's incredible. I'm working on a documentary series, and I never really, I mean, I know you can use the voice, replication, but I never really considered what you just said. Whereas if I'm missing a word, how many times you've had to cobble together a statement
every day?
I got to look through, an hour or a half hour of footage to find the word the.
Yes.
I mean, seriously, right?
With the proper, the proper way.
Right.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So maybe, that's a good use, but then I'm sure there's unintended consequences to that technology. So,
I mean, I think that's the big challenge, is the ethical use of AI, right? And if you are replicating someone's voice, you still need to have their permission, although we all know that there are going to be people that are misusing this, these new tools of the trade. But I am curious and really excited and nervous too, in a way, to see where it takes us, down the road. I do think, in all industries, there are going to be jobs that are lost because they are going to get replaced by bots or what have you. But throughout our lifetime and before us, there was always this evolving of technology where people would lose their jobs. I mean, you look at toll, are there anybody sitting in tolls? Is there anyone in a toll booth anymore?
Across the bridge over at the Ben Franklin Bridge over here, there's toll takers.
There's actually still a live person.
Yeah.
And I would say that's not going to last that much longer.
Yes. Yeah. It's here and there. And like, if there are, but look at, I used to be my own assistant editor, but now with technology, there's the need for that extra person. So in some ways it could make jobs. Because, I
think there's going to be opportunities that will grow from it, and we'll all need to be even more creative thinkers on, obviously people don't want to lose their jobs, but if this job is easily done, and it's not even just about the ease, it's about time saving. I mean, even just going back to like, a documentary series, the research aspect of it, something that may have taken weeks to compile, you can do in a very short period of time. So I think it's actually, to your point, it's a good tool, but we're going to need to find new ways to integrate new jobs.
Yeah, I think that'll come naturally
from that.
Because even if you're, if you're using, I don't know, like using research somehow, someone needs to check that.
Of course.
So,
of course, it's not always accurate.
Not always accurate, right?
So I'm going to take you back to music because I know you love music, and I know we're getting close on time too, but how important is audio and music in production, particularly post-production, obviously, but when you're pulling everything together? I'm honed in on audio because to me it's an integral part. If you can tell a story with just visuals, you better be able to just tell that story with audio. Sometimes not, right? Blank, no sound.
Yeah.
Is impactful. So what do you think about that?
So I love that you're placing an importance on audio, because it is audio and video. It is equally as important. So thank you to all of the sound people out there. And please, this is a call to everyone in the field. Please get room tone. Please get room tone.
For people who don't know what room tone is, because it's so obvious to us what it is, but.
Okay. So I will, and this is answering your question too. So if I'm putting together a scene, obviously the quality of the audio is important, but there is, in order to pace, audio is pacing. So when you are telling a story and you have the A roll, like, or the radio cut, as some people call it also, you're telling the story and you want it to, that's what the producers do. They want it to sound a certain way. They want this is the story. There are times when, someone who's not finessing a cut like a producer is just cutting together the A roll / audio radio cut. There needs to be some pacing in there to allow time for a certain fact or statement to land, or to add dramatic effect. So you need to add pauses. You need to add a delay, and that's where room tone fits in. Room tone is the tone of the room. If you're recording a scene and there's a bunch of people talking, and then the silence, you want them to stop talking and grab 10 seconds of it. That's it. So it's that
the ambient sound of the room.
The ambient sound. That's it. Well said. The ambient sound of the room. So when I'm adding a pause, or even if I have to shorten an idea by editing, which is, not faking it, I think that people tend to think that reality is fake because you've edited different words together. We're just creating a more efficient statement sometimes. So you need to let things breathe or close things up, and you need to put room tone so that the audio just doesn't drop out and sound strange. It allows words to flow into another with that ambience.
Because also otherwise things are cut so tightly.
Yes.
That it almost sounds clipped.
It sounds like a bad, right. It's a breath. It's a way to not make it noticeable that an audio edit is happening, and audio edits are happening all the time. So room tone really helps with that. So audio pacing is important. So I think that the pace of the show is based on the audio and based how people are talking. It's not just about what they're saying. It's about the rhythm. And then the music is the way to set the tone. The music sets, like, how it informs the viewer how they should be feeling about a certain scene, about a certain reaction. So music is extremely important because, and it has to be very well thought out. And that takes a long time to pick a right music track. Sometimes we have these libraries that have tens of thousands of songs. There's dozens of libraries. And then within each library, there are hundreds of songs, if not thousands of songs.
And they're always coming out with new.
They're coming out with new ones. There's genres, there's beats. There's sometimes they'll give you different versions of songs that have no drums or just piano. And we have to go through, the editors have to go through and kind of assess what they think the right track is. And there's no way that two editors are going to pick the same track.
Right.
And also it's tough sometimes when you have like maybe it's a supervising producer, an executive producer and an editor who are at odds with what they think good music is or what is appropriate. That's a really tough, if you click with someone, a producer that like you really, you have that good language with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's
about that dance. It's like a choreography, those puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
It's not just the visuals and the audio, it's the people. We're all kind of a puzzle. And when it all comes together, it becomes this beautiful work of art, right?
Yeah. And you may not even, and a beautiful work of art may be just watching something and not noticing the music or anything about it. It's just like, it feels natural. It feels right. So I actually have certain bins of specific music tracks that I know different producers like, that I keep sometimes. So if I know I'm working
your own little library.
If I'm working with this person, I know to stay away from this genre and this genre. But I really love I really like scoring. That's the tedious part. Just listening to, sometimes I'll go through part of a day and I'll be like, I just listened to 20 tracks and I can't find the right 35 seconds to just put under this little part. It's important.
I love listening to music and finding those nuggets, whether it could be, just a bar of music or, because we're not always using, when you're selecting music, you're not necessarily taking the whole piece, right? You might use
never
the open, you might use the tail end of it, or just, a little change up. But I am so glad we're talking about this, because audio drives the storytelling process. So it starts in the recording in the field and it ends in the edit room. And it's, to me, one of the most critical aspects of the job that we do is not in preparation of going out. We're not just thinking about what visuals are we getting, how are we setting up that interview, or what B-roll are we getting. Mm-hmm. For me, it's also about trying to determine in the field what kind of special sound, like food, you want to hear the sizzling in the pan. You want to get the fire shooting up when they drop something in, right? And the oil, but you want to hear the sizzling. And there's a lot of sound effects libraries out there. Sure. But there's nothing like getting it recorded.
Get it there. And projects that are specifically, I'm thinking, when I was talking about that, I was thinking about just doing a regular scene in like the Christina show that I'm doing. But if I'm doing a sizzle reel, or if I'm working on a show like the MTV show or something that has a nice montage in it, you better believe that music is going to be so important. And editing to music is joy. That is the most fun.
I love it too. I agree with you. So in our parting time, because we're out of time, but it's been so fun chatting with you. I don't know if we forgot anything. I mean, there's so much and we can talk again, but where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years? Do you see yourself kind of branching out, doing, more in the field stuff? Or do you just see yourself learning new technology, or kind of a mixture of all of it?
Well, I do see myself in the future at Glass. So, and hopefully, I honestly I like to branch out a little bit more into even taking on more responsibility of like producing and editing some stuff. So producing and editing scenes as they come. So I'd like to do more of that so that I get an even fuller picture of the process, which like I mentioned earlier, I am mostly like a predator in certain situations, but I'd like to do some more of that. I hope to see some more projects that are maybe nearer and dearer to my heart. I like to learn. I would like to like an opportunity to learn while I'm working. So hopefully I'll see more of that. And if something comes up that through the doors, if I can help bring something through the doors that would be food related or nutrition or something to learn, I would totally grab for that. And in 10 years, maybe I'll be retired and work on my Act 2 career, which would definitely be in sort of like a consulting and cooking, plant-based instruction, that kind of fashion. So,
well, you have so many amazing talents, and I just, I love hearing all the things that you're working on, and I hope we do. I'm serious. I hope we do get an opportunity to work together at some point. But
we'll make it happen.
Yeah, I think. I mean, Nancy Glass has built such a rock star team over there. I have a lot of friends that worked at on Restaurant Impossible or at Banyan, and our paths have crossed. Nancy and I actually collaborated a couple of times on Abramson Philly Fights Cancer videos that we had done together. And it was really such a wonderful experience to work with her as, a peer versus working for her. I've never worked for Nancy. She's been a Keystone Pictures client, so our paths have crossed for sure. But it was just so nice to relate to her at that level. And I actually really would love to get her on the podcast.
Oh, yes.
I know she can really share some amazing stories as well.
Yes, absolutely. That would be a lot of fun. She is wonderful to work with, to work for. She's a collaborator and she's a pro, pioneer.
She is absolutely a pioneer. She's really given a lot of people so much opportunity, right, for growth. And I love the fact that you guys really promote from within, because that's a gift,
Yeah.
Sure, it makes it harder for people on the outside to break in, right? Because people
it's a small business. I mean, people see what we have, and like I'm a staff editor. Like, what? Where does that?
I still am blown away by the 11 staff editors. But
anyway, it makes us work. We feel supported, makes us work harder, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, well, you're in a great place and you have a great team. And I look forward to seeing more of your videos. And we talked about physically being together to record. So the next time we record a podcast, let's cook. You can teach me some vegan recipes and how to make it taste as good as you. You really are the one that gave me confidence to use lentils.
Oh, good. That's so amazing. I'm so happy.
I know, that's such a weird thing to say, right?
No,
but I'm
it's
serious.
great.
Like, I was like, lentils? Like, I've eaten lentil soup, but it was, I got out of my comfort zone there and I was like, wow, she's right. They actually add so much flavor and texture. And I'm like, I'm a lentil girl.
I love it. Oh, I'm so glad you told me that. Yes.
Well, we'll do that. That'll be fun.
Sounds
we'll add a little wine into it as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been so great talking with you. I want to just talk with you as, off camera as friends. I want to hear more about what you're up to, and thanks for having me on for this. I really appreciate it.
Subscribe to our podcast to hear more.